All right, we are back here on the podcast, getting ready for the college football playoff title game next weekend in Houston with Michigan and Washington set to square off on Monday. Join me today to break it all down, catch up on all the big college football headlines. Great friend of the podcast, Bill Benner of the Sporting News here. Bill, welcome back. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming back on here. I got to say, the picture looks a lot different than the last time we talked when we thought that there was no way the committee would leave Florida State out here. And controversial that call was, it did end up resulting in two very fun games.
Yeah, I mean, the actual games were amazing. I think for Michigan and Alabama to come down to the last play and at the Rose Bowl in that setting with those teams and how they played, and it was just an amazing watch. And I don't know too many people that would disagree with that assessment. Same deal with Washington, Texas. Great comeback by the Longhorns. Washington, Mike Phillips put on a show. I don't think his stock could be any higher right now. And you got, no matter what format we use, 4 teams, BCS, pool era, the best teams in the country. And they've proven it, and one of them gets to go 15-0. It's amazing how the plan comes together sometimes.
Certainly is here, and obviously that Michigan-Alabama game is obviously a lot of fun because Alabama looks like they're going to, kind of salt it away late second half here. Michigan ties it late. They get the go-ahead score in overtime. They stop Alabama on the 4th down play, and they're trying to tie it up again in overtime here. Where's the big takeaway from the Michigan-Alabama game?
Well, I mean, like I said, an amazing game that Michigan finally, I think Michigan fans were so conditioned that something would go wrong in those moments, and a lot of things did go wrong with the special teams, but they were able to gut it out and play well when it mattered the most. J.J. McCarthy's kind of cool hand way that he was able to lead them down the field on that game-tying touchdown drive was huge. I think, the overtime was awesome. Alabama, we can question that last play if you want, but I mean, it was Michigan's interior line, which had been their strength all season, was the big difference maker.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned the Michigan fans of being nervous here. I know that this program has been knocking on the door for a bit. They get to the playoff last year, they end up getting their doors. End up losing to TCU. Then this year they get Alabama drawing. We saw the video of the Michigan players sort of giving the reaction when they saw Alabama comes up here. So what does it mean for this program if they finally sort of slay the Dragon away and win a game in the playoff and get to the final?
It just shows what Jim Harbaugh's been able to accomplish there, and this program's really solid. And they have taken on this villain role, and no matter what people say, it seems to bother them. They've been able to beat Penn State when Jim Harbaugh wasn't on the sideline. They were able to beat Ohio State. I thought Ohio State might win that game. I really did. I picked Ohio State. I picked Alabama, and they just continue to win, as I've been putting it. They're winning in everybody's face, and they don't care what we think. They don't care what we think about the future. They don't care what we think about Jim Harbaugh's future. They just continue to win, and I think that's a tribute to J.J. McCarthy and Blake Corum and a veteran defense and a culture built on winning. We don't have to like it, but job done.
Yeah, it certainly is interesting with Harbaugh too, because now the annual cycle of the NFL's gonna come calling again. Is he interested? Is he not interested? But for him to win it here, if he manages to win this game on Monday against Washington here and get Michigan a national title here, I feel like his legacy really takes a step up.
Of course, I mean, and I think even if he leaves to the end, I don't know why people are such in a big hurry to get him off to the NFL. He's great for college football. He's great because there's only a handful of coaches that I've kind of used the phrase that they're universally hated outside their conference, or loved or hated, whatever. But Nick Saban, Sanders, Jim Harbaugh. That's the list. You can say Kirby, maybe Dabo. That list. Nobody is more polarizing than Jim Harbaugh, Nick Saban, Deion Sanders. And if the college game loses him, he's just another guy on an NFL sideline. He's still going to be quirky and all those things, but his profile won't be the same. And college football, in a lot of ways, thrives on that. I mean, when I was growing up, it was Steve Spurrier and Bobby Bowden.
Yeah, I definitely remember those days here. And let's get to the other game here, the Washington-Texas game. We had the big shootout at first. Washington looks like they're going to pull away. Texas has a chance to come back and tie. They end up falling short at the end there. So what's your takeaway from Washington, Texas?
I mean, what a great game, and Michael Penix played well, played more than well. I mean, he was on fire. I liken it to a basketball game where you got a hot shooter. He shoots a lot of shots, and then this one he was hot, and they made the plays. They kept it going. It was a fun, furious first half, and Texas stalled for a little bit. And one thing, if you're Washington, you got to be a little bit worried. I know it was fluky, but they didn't close that game out, and they're going to have to do that against Michigan. I think they're going to have to throw a lot, but they can't be one-dimensional. They couldn't get their running game going against Texas. It showed. If they're one-dimensional against Michigan, it will only feed that pass rush, and they'll have some problems.
Yeah, for sure. I'll touch on Penix for a second, too, because obviously you bring him up. You guys, the huge game. A lot of people on the East Coast have not seen much Washington football, so first time they got a lot of eyes laid on him. A lot of people now are going, oh, like, this guy could be an NFL quarterback. And I know that there's a big push for quarterbacks in this April's draft year. Like, do you think Penix has what it takes to be successful on the next level?
I mean, I would hope so. He has plenty of experience, and, that always makes me laugh. It's like, well, we've been watching this guy all year. He almost won the Heisman Trophy. He probably easily could have won the Heisman Trophy. So, yeah, I think he could be a late first-round pick for sure. I think McCarthy's in that same vein for sure. Quinn Ewers, another guy. If I was sorting them out and stacking them up, I'm not quite sure which one I would take first. But if you said, hey, I'd like Penix, or hey, Ewers and the physical tools and the way he can throw the football down the field, okay, or McCarthy, and kind of, he's not Tom Brady, nobody is, but there's a little bit of that in his game. You keep doubting him. He's 26-1.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to doubt guys that just find ways to win, for sure. And they're going to try and win this game on Monday here. So start with the Wolverines, who are the favorites heading into this game here. What's the keys to victory for Michigan in this game?
Not turning the ball over, running the football well, playing, not having the same things happen that happened against TCU, where it turned into a Big 12 game, a shootout, where they were getting up and down and 50 points. They don't want to play to 50. They want to play to 28 or 24. If they play to 28, they'll win. But that's the key, keeping that running game going, keeping Michael Penix in front. Be interesting to see how that secondary holds up against Washington's receivers. But I say that, I was telling people a couple years ago, they played a team at Ohio State that had Garrett Wilson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Chris Olave, and Marvin Harrison, and they won the game by 15. So, if you're going to make one comparison, you gotta acknowledge that also happened. And I don't think the Washington receivers they're good. They aren't as good as those guys were.
Yeah, it's true. Speaking of those Washington receivers here, you talked about here, like, I feel like them, their chance to win this game is like they need to get this thing into that Big 12 style football game where they're putting up points and forcing Michigan to keep up with them on that end of the field here. So, do you think that's the key for Washington? Is there anything else you have in mind for the Huskies?
Well, yeah, I mean, and they've got the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line, and that offensive line has to hold up. They've got, like I said, a defense that's got to maybe try to force some turnovers. Michigan doesn't give it away. They can't count on Michigan having all the same special teams meltdowns. If I didn't mention that already, I think I did. But and they have to have a little bit of luck. I mean, they are an underdog for a reason. This is a really good Michigan team. I think Kalen DeBoer has done a fantastic job with this team. The way they've won those close games, I think it's like 8 or 9 of those this season. Pretty incredible. So, they're going to go in thinking they can win too.
Yeah, for sure. It's also funny, you think about it, these teams are going to be conference rivals next year, and now they're playing for the championship.
I mean, that's college football. I mean, after this game, you're all going to have to reset. We're going to 12 teams. We're going to have weird teams and weird conferences. You're going to have to check like a guide to see which team's in which conference. But that's what people wanted, I would submit it the other way. I would say, the last 2 years are proof that maybe we didn't need to rush to go to that 12-teamer. But more teams, more football, all of those things will be great, but you never know what the end of the road produces.
Yeah, for sure. You have to make a call right now. Who would you pick to win the game?
Well, I already picked Michigan. I picked Michigan by a touchdown, and I think it could be by more. Our sporting news experts, we had 7 of us pick the game, and 4 people picked Michigan, and 3 people picked Washington, and that shows that we got a really good title game. It wasn't like last year where everybody picked. So I think right off the bat, we've got something riveting. It could be fun. It's going to be a fun way to close this thing out.
Yeah, for sure. Here, I also want to touch on the other big storyline from the Bowls. I'm not talking about the Pop Tarts. I'm talking about the Orange Bowl situation here, where we had Florida State goes in, they don't get picked. A lot of their guys either opt out or hit the transfer portal. Ends up, I mean, a 63-3 loss to Georgia here. Like, what's your take on that controversy with all the opt outs in that game?
I mean, this is like I said, this can't have it both ways. I mean, if you're going to open up the transfer portal and NIL and not get mad about opt outs, you can't get mad that a 60-point blowout happened. Yeah, it just shows the diminishing value of bowl games outside the bowls or the playoffs, and that's going to continue. When Kirby Smart's apologizing basically for winning a football game, that was a little bizarre, but it's certainly sign of the times. And when we go to the 12-team playoff, those bowls that aren't inside the playoff are going to continue to see a decrease in value. So, again, like I said, it's a little bit of part of the problem, and I get that, but we'll see where it goes from there. Hopefully, that we have less opt-outs, but I can't guarantee that. I mean, you had guys transferring. Malik Murphy transferred to Duke in the playoffs. So, I mean, who's going to say it's going to stop when we go to the next chapter? I seriously doubt it does.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think Kirby Smart had a nail on the head when he basically after the game, he's like, look, like, if you're going to have the portal open right after the regular season ends, if you're going to have the opt-outs, people reserving their draft stock or the ability to transfer somewhere else here, like, the bowl system is broken here because, like, a lot of these guys are just not going to care for a game. It's meaningless aside from you get to take a trip and you get to go, like, do whatever the sponsors want you to do. I do think, like, if there is going to be a bowl system after the 12-team playoff year, I think you have to at least, like, not open the portal until, like, after the bowl season is over.
Well, yeah, they need to redo the college football calendar. I mean, until that happens, that's why I'm say, yeah, more football is going to be fun. Don't get me wrong. More playoff teams, more football. I understand all that, but you've also created a system where we're on shaky ground. Like until they the portal, until they fix the calendar, until they fix the opt out. Well, they're never going to fix the opt outs. Kids are always going to opt out at bowl games now. Maybe this 12-team playoff, maybe we could have waited a few years and done it right. We've got to fix the power structure of they're going to have teams and SEC teams are going to want all the playoff spots because we saw what happened to Liberty against Oregon. There's a lot going on in college football.
Yeah, it feels like a mess. It always feels like that they chase the money first and then worry out the consequences later. And then I think you're getting more of these Orange Bowl games as long as that happens.
Well, yeah, I mean, and don't act surprised when it does. Like, that's what I tell people. Like, there's this undercurrent on Twitter and social media, I read it, where people are like, well, viewership's up and the sport's fine. And that doesn't mean the product's good. I mean, some of those bowl games were super exciting. Don't get me wrong. I watched most of them. Some of them were terrible. South Florida Syracuse was horrible because Syracuse was playing a backup, a former quarterback turned tight end at quarterback. And they weren't able to throw the ball because of the portal. Florida State, that's a great example of, you can't say that was good television. It was awful television. So as long as you're willing to acknowledge that, then you can understand that, yes, some of these things need to be fixed before we go to something else.
Yeah, I agree with your point. The opt-outs never happened. This does feel weird that, like, USC, for example, has, like, its best, like, passing game of the season when K. Williams opts out to protect his draft stock. Stuff like that's going to be a product of the system we're in now.
Yeah. Obviously this is a loaded draft class. Caleb Williams hasn't declared yet. At least he hasn't, unless he did this afternoon. What to make of it. And I think you'll see more of that. So again, I still love the sport. I still love what we saw. The finished product's pretty good, but as we head into this next chapter, there are a lot of things that are going to continue to push and pull at this sport as it pushes towards that Super League model. Not limited to. I mean, for example, I'm doing a top 25 of way too early top 25 like everybody else on the planet does, but it's mostly Power 5 teams. It's really going to be hard for the Group of 5 to climb in there as the money and revenue disparity continues. Now, there'll be exceptions. There'll always be a couple upsets in there, but they'll be few and far between.
Yeah, for sure. Keep an eye on how this shakes out going forward, Bill. Thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it. People want to follow you on social media, keep up with your college football coverage of the sporting news. How can they do that?
Yeah, I'm at Bill Bender 92 at sportingnews.com. Getting after it. We'll be live at Houston on Monday night, and it should be a lot of fun. So I appreciate your time, and thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Bill. Hopefully we have a good game on Monday.
I hope so.